Hello, hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into the Odd Thoughts Podcast. At the Odd Thoughts Podcast, we like to talk about the everyday odd thoughts, have conversations on relatable topics, and discuss whatever comes to mind. My name is Gunther, and I am your host. Welcome to episode 32. For episode 32, I started off by talking about maybe the possibility of having a talk show. I know it's not necessarily in my near future, but if fame or whatever kind of came my way, I think it'd be fun to have a talk show one day. Then I transitioned into another kind of fun topic, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the about Ouija boards, however you want to say it. I said it both ways and when I was talking about the topic. But I talked a little bit about the history, kind of how far back that history goes, and more so the history of like talking boards, and maybe if I think they work, and I don't think I'd actually use one. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about I wanted to kind of talk about seeking help. I know that sometimes there's everyday struggles that we have that we just can't push through on. That things kind of get out of our control in a way, and we overextend ourselves, and we inevitably will try to go seeking for help. But it's not always to go. It's not always easy finding where to go and seeing all the resources that there is available to us. Lastly, I ended the podcast on talking a little bit about 25 of the most like the best maybe must see movies, at least to this article. I had read an article that was talking about like 25 must see movies. And some of them I think are some of them like all time classics, but a lot of them were whatever movies. And I think everybody has their own list in their heads. So if you want to listen to any of these topics, I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for stopping by. Please enjoy. How's everybody doing though? I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope that everybody's having a good time going into the end of 2023. I hope that 2024 brings you a whole lot of peace and a whole lot of fortune. We are all just trying to do our best with the best of our abilities, just trying to be the best person we can be. The struggles we face are only enforcing a strength that we need, kind of callousing ourselves to face things. The decisions you make are all in the best of what you can and what you know. It may look different than others, and others might be a little further along or a little bit so and so better off than you are, but we're just doing what we can. I think it's best not to judge someone on what they're doing. And if someone's trying their best to achieve something, you got to let them be them. Some don't want to work for things or they just don't want to be judged because they have their own untamed struggles or whatever, right? So they'll have these visceral responses towards others or this unwarranted slander towards people that might be actually trying to push for something more. And I always say it isn't worth getting worked up about. Don't waste your time defending yourself sometimes. I think time will tell who is with you and who is against you. Doing what's best for you is the only thing you need to worry about. Doing best for your own predicament and doing the necessary things to be you is all that matters. We are all trying to make it just another day, and if you look at the hate that people are kind of spreading your way, or you're looking how much further along people are, you're going to get kind of swept up in that dark cloud. It's best not to get stuck letting others push against you, right? But rather stick to the path that you spent so much of your sanity forming. You spent so much time trying to better yourself. This continue on that path. Let others do their thing, and if they want to spread hate towards you, don't waste your time with them. Just be you. I know y'all are doing good. I know y'all are doing the best of your abilities to be you. I'm doing the best of my abilities to be me. I'm doing okay. I'm getting into this point coming into the end of 2023 where I'm getting more of a schedule for the podcast, and I'm hoping that this schedule kind of allows me to work further on like other content. Kind of want to get into this process of recording ahead as well. So I'm gonna have a 4-day break. I'm gonna next upload for the next podcast episode will be Tuesday. So I'm kind of working on thinking about trying to record multiple episodes ahead and just kind of spreading it out so that I have a little more time thinking about anything else. Just trying to figure out what else I want to do. And I'm going to start posting on it'll be Monday, Thursdays, Tuesday, Fridays. It'll kind of alternate weeks. So like one week will be Monday, Thursday, next week will be Tuesday, Friday. Then Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. And then I'm hoping that like Thursday to Tuesday will give me a couple extra days to kind of just do things. Like I said, like I'm gonna take this next couple of extra days that I'm gonna have, and I'm gonna record ahead basically. I just think like it'll free myself up, and hopefully with kind of maybe if I give myself December off in a way that I can spend a couple days recording, maybe for the whole month of December, which would be pretty nice. That it just opens up a further possibility to try to do something else, to work on other content, or just open myself up to other creativities, and or just search for something. And then just kind of get into that habit of maybe every few days just recording a couple ahead so that I just have a couple stockpiled. Not too far ahead because there might be inevitably a time when I want to switch up, the podcast. And I'm kind of in a zone with my podcast right now where I feel like it's most suitable for how I think I want it to look and or how I want it to sound and stuff like that. But I always try to leave myself room for a little bit of difference. But I still think it's a good idea. And hopefully I start to figure out what else to do. I want to make other style of content on YouTube and social media, but I always say that I'm trying my best to stay away from being like an influencer in the sense of just doing the next trend and my day-to-day life stuff. I don't always want to do that. I don't want to do any of that really. I just always want to I want to try to use my words and then try to use my thoughts and kind of keep on the path of promoting talking and having conversations with people and not just in a super like emotional way where people feel like they have to attack each other in some sort of way and also promote the simple things where you feel like you're too good to talk about certain things or you feel like you're too good to have conversations on certain mundane or minuscule topics, but I want to encourage that everybody expands their depth in a way that you kind of have a little verse in a bunch of things, and when people bring things up, that you can always have an opinion or a thought on something. So I kind of want to stick with that. Stay tuned in for that. But yeah, just that's kind of the idea I guess I have a little bit. But let's move on. Let's hop into episode 32. Talk shows are a mainstay in television, whether it's daytime television, nighttime television. Some shows offer a up-to-date way of knowing current world events. Others offer kind of a place for hosts to interview celebrities and have fun with pop culture stuff. And then you got some that are more sensationalized and have these chaotic things, these random things happen. And you can consider some to fall in between on these categories and maybe some that kind of sit in all in their own. Whether you watch it on TV, you listen to it on radio, or wherever you can get your talk shows nowadays, talk shows are pretty entertaining. It can be intriguing to see interactions with people, I think. Hear stories from celebrities, see how people react to current news events and like I said, the more sensationalized ones where it gets just crazy. Not all shows are loved, but many have come and made an imprint on talk show culture and kind of been set in the history of talk shows. I only really think I really, ingest talk shows through the clips on social media, but I still enjoy the content nonetheless. I always wondered if maybe one day, if I kind of had some sort of fame or notoriety or whatever, that maybe it would be kind of fun to have a talk show. I kind of always think about maybe one day if, like I said, if everything aligned perfectly, what if I had my own talk show? I like kind of meeting new people. I love talking to people, and I think being interviewing others would be kind of cool. I know that I'd probably like have more of a sit down interview style show, and I don't think I'd do anything super. I wouldn't do the chaotic stuff. You know, like I enjoy talk shows. I think I generally do enjoy talk shows, and it feels like they have always been this like kind of in the history of television since the beginning of television. They've been like a really big mainstay. Now we've got guys like I said, we got like CNN shows and like or Fox like CBS in the morning, Good Morning America, or we have other shows like Jerry Springer. Well, I guess Jerry Springer's not on the show or on TV anymore, but Maury or something like that. And you still have like or like just more normal like sit down interview shows like the Kelly Clarkson show or whatever. It feels like there's just so many different types of talk shows. My favorites, I feel like, I mean, I sort of enjoyed Jimmy Fallon. I think I've always been a fan of Jimmy Fallon. When he was on SNL and when he was doing movies in the early 2000s and stuff like that. I like Jimmy Fallon, and I think he has a bit of a personality. At least at first, it really felt kind of genuine, and it really was kind of this kind of. He kind of felt fun, and it was fun at first, but it does kind of feel a little fake now. I know that a lot of people kind of put that microscope on him, and it's understood. It feels like I said, it doesn't always feel genuine when he's talking to some celebrities, and but I think as like a host, you kind of have to play it up. I say that like Conan O'Brien's probably like my favorite talk show host, and these are kind of more specific late night talk shows, but that's kind of I think the talk shows that I think of the most are like the late night talk shows, the Tonight Show, the Late Late Show. But Conan O'Brien was one of my favorites. I thought he was super funny and he was a good writer and always had like good bits and his his interviewing skills maybe he was a little awkward at times, but I think that kind of offered a really good charm. He's just a fun. I thought he was fun. And if I ever like want, I know he doesn't have a talk show anymore. He has like a podcast now, but if I was ever going to get interviewed by a talk show host, that would be the person. But like I said, there's so many different types. It's not just like nighttime, right? So there's the like morning shows like Good Morning America or like Jerry Springer, which is more like sensational tabloid kind of talk shows or whatever. And then like the Ellen DeGeneres, which did like the celebrity talk, interviews or whatever, which also kind of like was what late night is. It's more about celebrities coming on and having fun and being a little more personable. And then you got it's hard not to talk about like Oprah Winfrey when you talk about talk shows, you know what I'm saying? She had kind of like a lifestyle show, right, where she interviewed people of all different walks of life and also tried to talk to people who watched her show and talked about health and lifestyle, literally what it's called. But I always think of late night talk shows more so. But I guess even I guess you could even consider like there's like I was there's like The Talking Dead, which was like the show that would come on after like the new episodes of The Walking Dead. And The Talking Dead is basically a talk show, but it's just reviewing the episode that you just watched and maybe interviewing a couple of the celebrity or the people that were in the show in that episode specifically. And then like something like the Eric Andre show, which is just basically a spoof. It's a spoof talk show, or on what was it on Adult Swim? It was Space Ghost, right? It's it's just so many different varieties of talk shows, but nonetheless, I think the big thing that kind of makes them super entertaining, at least to me, is just seeing kind of interactions with people. You kind of get to see more of a little bit of a broken down, a little less maybe superficial. The whole point of the host is trying to not just like poke and prod at the celebrity or the guest on their show, but also like learn things and get them to open up on and tell things. And usually it's surrounded around like what they're currently doing in life, but nonetheless, sometimes you get some great moments and some very personal moments. But also when you watch shows like when you watch something like CBS Mornings, right? At one of those morning news shows, you get a lot of like the current events and you get a lot of like cool stories about like people in general, about people kind of just doing their own things and of all different walks of life, I think, and that's kind of cool too. Usually I think they try to center around usually better, like more positive stories. Sometimes they can get a little bit like, they can get a little intense or a little more serious, but But I think when we're talking about like the breakfast morning shows type things, it's usually to start the morning off good. If you want to watch like actual news, then go watch the news. Don't go watch Good Morning America necessarily. But also, I mean, I can't help but think about I love I love the late night like Jerry Springer or watching like Maury or Steve Wilkos like early in the morning on Saturdays. Those shows were always the best. I don't know how Jerry Springer especially. I don't know how you would find all those crazy types of people. I don't know where he finds every single interesting person, every rare type of human being that can walk this earth. It's crazy. And everybody I think likes to see a little chaoticness in people's lives. So when it's not your own, it's kind of fun to see other people doing it. But I always I don't really like listen to the radio, so the radio talk show things feel like just aren't as prevalent to me, but it's still very much so part of talk show culture. It's you could either watch them on TV or you can listen to it on the radio on your way to work or something. I was reading that the first talk show was in 1951. It was on WJTV or WJV TV, sorry. But it was a man named Joe Franklin, I guess it was, and he had like it was from 1951 to 1993. And in 1962 he moved networks. So, yeah, I don't know. New deal, more money, who knows. But shout out Joe Franklin, kind of starting the whole talk show thing. Now, it was on television, I think, or yeah, because it says TV. It's WJV TV. I don't know. But it's that's kind of cool to think about. Since the beginning of broadcasting on TV, talk shows have been a thing. People have wanted to know, want to see other people telling you the news actually in person. I think that's what kind of there's a comfort to seeing someone talking back to you. Feels kind of personable. But I like to think about what my own talk show would be. It would be cool to have a talk show one day. I think I look around at a lot of the talk show hosts we have now, and I think now I can do a better job. Maybe that's a little overconfidence, and I got to earn my way a little bit, I guess, right? But I mean, I could do it, I think, easily. I can have some fun bits, do fun, great interviews, actually, like, do cool interviews and not just random questions brought into their lives for no reason, try to be objecting into their selves. I just want it to be, it'd be just a comfortable vibe, hopefully. I think it'd be cool to kind of like think about how I'd structure the show. I'd want it to be I want to have fun with it, but I'd still want it to be super serious. You're not super serious. Not, I didn't mean it like that, but I don't want it to be like super goofy. I want super serious, super or certain serious moments. Sorry. I want to be able to like actually break down and talk to these celebrities or whatever guest I have. They don't have to be like big time celebrities or anything. Especially thinking like the modern day with like internet and stuff like that, that YouTube, they looking for a talk show or something like that, or all these other platforms that kind of are becoming, bigger media companies in their own rights. It kind of think like that could be a big thing to take advantage of, just not on what's on TV or what's available on the radio, but take advantage of, the internet as some of these shows actually do, like posting clips on social media and on YouTube or whatever. There's so many. I can't even think about like who I'd want as like some guest. If I if I don't know. If it would hopefully be a perfect scenario where I can get like my dream guest for the first episode. Whatever, I don't. It's that's even hard to think about because there's so many people I'd like to meet and so many people I'd love to talk to, and there's a lot of celebrities even that kind of passed away, right? That I think would be kind of fun to have. So I don't know. It's hard to think about what my dream guest is, to be honest. I'd have a co-host though. Maybe I could have like one of my sisters. That'd be kind of fun. Just hang out every day and write fun bits and get to have cool, just have fun. Literally be in the office with each other all the time. They get to introduce me and we get to play off each other. I think a lot of these shows, that's what makes a lot of fun with the host and the co-host as well. There's a kind of this relationship. They feed into it with each other, and Jimmy Fallon and what is his Steve Wiggins or Steve Higgins, right? Is that his co-host's name? Sorry, But or even Conan O'Brien with Andy Richter, like it's just classic like people. But I hope that one day maybe that I would it's I don't know. That's not like my dream, but if everything kind of lined up in a certain way and I was given an opportunity to have a talk show, that would be awesome. And maybe one day if I became famous, yada yada, I would love to go on a talk show. Unfortunately, my favorite Conan is not around doing a talk show anymore, but I would hopefully try to I'd just try to jump on a good opportunity if it came. But I don't see talk shows necessarily stopping. I think everybody likes to see people interacting with each other, and when you get to like, you get to have your, feed of news, or you get to see a little more broken down version of a celebrity, or if you're into the more sensationalized content, then there's a talk show for everybody. I've always wondered what happens after death. Is there a possibility that maybe we wander the world as like spirits, just entities destined to just explore forever, never really truly passing on? Through history and through different cultures, people have had their own ways of connecting to the so other spirits, the people that have moved on. Communications and ways of summoning these spirits who perhaps maybe still exist on Earth. Maybe. Whatever you may believe. Many methods to conjure up spirits have been used, but one popular one, at least in like today's society, is Ouija boards. I hope I'm saying that right. Ouija, Ouija. Sorry, or at least it's some sort of talking board. Is what there's. I feel like through multiple cultures there have been these examples of talking boards and these planchettes, these little icons that move around and along letters that form words. And whether you believe it or not, I don't know if I necessarily believe so, but it's still interesting to think about the history of the Ouija board and its use, or just like those talking boards in general. I think it's kind of spooky to think about trying to contact the other worlds or spirits from that have kind of not moved on yet. Maybe that they're caught in some sort of purgatory, some sort of limbo. But I was looking up some history of like the Ouija boards and like kind of maybe like when the first examples of it are shown. And it was looking that I was reading on Wikipedia, I think is like where I got my information. So I don't know how reliable, but apparently like I think in China, 1100 AD, there's some of the kind of the earliest examples of automatic writing, something that like writing that's not done by a physical person but by a planchette, like planchette writing. And usually was used in some sort of necromancy, which is trying to contact the spirit world. And then, but like as in popular culture, as it kind of became more known as a Ouija board or Ouija board, kind of came with the spiritualist movement in America, which was kind of popular after the Civil War, like around that time. There was like a thing that people kind of felt like they could contact dead relatives, the dead loved ones from the war, and there was kind of it was very popular at the time, as the whole spiritualist movement kind of was. And then by like 1886, I think I read, it was pretty common. But I was reading, apparently it was, I guess, either invented or at least the Ouija board, the ones that we know today, it was coined or started by a woman named Helen Peters Noseworthy. I think that's how you say it. She was a spiritualist, a medium, someone who could say that they could contact the dead. She's from Baltimore. But I guess she says that she like created the board, but it named itself. And then it her brother-in-law, a man named Elijah Bond, also his business partner Charles Kennard. I think we're all kind of involved in that as well. More, Elijah Bond and Charles Kennard look like they're more on like on the production side, the money side, and Helen was the spiritual person, the medium. Sorry. But that's kind of cool. Charles Kennard owned a novelty company, the Kennard Novelty Company, and I guess they invented the first what we know as the Ouija board today. I don't know what to say. I should have looked up how to say it, but I've heard both. I think like Ouija. I'm just gonna keep saying both. And then apparently their first patents kind of failed. I don't think people really thought like it was like there was still so skeptics. I think in the whole movement there was skeptics. Always have been, and still today. But apparently, I guess after a while, with kind of the failure of that first patent, eventually in 1901, a man by the name of Fold. Sorry, I was going to say Fluid, but it's William Fold, who was an employee of Elijah Bond, took over production for whatever reason, and he officially, I guess, made it the Ouija board, even though it kind of had named itself or whatever before, but he kind of officially made it what it is. But it's kind of cool. It's it's interesting to think about this idea of this kind of autonomous, motion, this unconscious motion, and this thing moving around the board, and you're supposed to like make contact with the planchette or whatever, but it's still kind of cool to think about maybe that could be a possibility, even in the sense that it's not like I've always thought that maybe ghosts are kind of just it's more so not just free wandering spirits, but energy kind of caught in time in a way where it's like people caught in certain moments of their life even though they've moved on or whatever. But I don't know. I can't contact the dead, and I don't think I really ever want to get involved in that kind of thing. I don't think I consider myself a skeptic. I just think it's interesting to think. I try to keep myself open minded on that. But I've seen people use a Ouija board. I've been at like a party or two that like people have like just for fun, right? It's never been like a creepy like, hey, let's contact the dead. It's nothing like that. I've never gone to the wrong like parties. No satanic parties or whatever. But and not saying that that Ouija boards are used for satanic use. Not meaning to say that. But I don't want to use it personally. I don't feel like even like I said, even if it's fake and it's just for fun, I don't even want to play with that stuff. I kind of freak myself out a little bit with that. I kind of hold this like, am I a little skeptical, or do I really truly maybe kind of believe that it can be a real thing, that there are ghosts and there are spirits and we can't contact them? I don't know. And it's, like it usually always feel like it's for fun, right? We talk about it in a fun sense, but people probably use it for those very serious things, right? You've heard stories about people, using the board and weird things happening or whatever. And it's hard to believe when you're not there, but you can't really discount everybody's account, right? But also makes you think maybe you just kind of your mind's playing a trick on you, and if you kind of sat there and you freaked yourself out and worked it up in your mind that yeah, you're probably gonna maybe think you're seeing something or experiencing something. But I'm also just thinking about like in the whole with the whole popularity in the spiritualist movement, thinking about like that maybe got some people's hopes up and they thought they were talking to the dead, but it was really just someone playing a trick on them. I think there you can say that some people who are empaths or mediums or whatever have the intentions of actually trying to help people and comfort people, but as most a lot of things there are scam artists and people who are gonna, take advantage of people's weakness and imagine if you're someone that wanted to, talk to a dead loved one, and you just wanted to say one more thing, and this person claimed that you could talk to them through this Ouija board, and maybe you're doing it by yourself, and like you're sitting there, and nothing happens, or someone's like faking it the whole time, and you kind of like going along with it because you want to believe, but I think it can maybe get your hopes up and be kind of false hopes, but. I think it's like most things. It's with like it's I don't know. Some people have had strong experiences with the other world and spirits or whatever, and some people have never. But I question sometimes believing that people maybe can actually contact spirits, and questioning that an actual like a Ouija board or any sort of spirit talking board is even capable of doing something like that. But then I sit here and I say like I wouldn't actually use one because I don't want it actually to work. But that's part of the belief, I think, of thinking that maybe there is something that happens after we die, that we actually kind of stick around, and maybe not forever, maybe just for a certain amount of time until there's room for us or whatever. I know that if I was a ghost, I'd love to contact my loved ones and let them know that I'm okay and make sure they're okay. It makes you think that then if there was an ability to use a Ouija board, some sort of talking board, that you'd want to take advantage of that. I think if you keep it in the fun context, then maybe it's not maybe it's not the worst thing. But I mean, the example of the history of talking boards, even going back to ancient China, maybe even before, right? But then even still, kind of the idea that it's trying to contact the dead. Maybe not with such serious intentions of like necromancy. Maybe just to have a little fun nowadays. It's kind of become a novelty thing, right? But nonetheless, Ouija boards are kind of interesting, and it's kind of an interesting thing to think about if they actually might work. Struggling with our emotions or struggling with day-to-day tasks is a unwanted exception in our everyday human lives. We are not always able to know how capable we are or how we're going to handle situations as they come or as they go along. We might mix ourselves up in a clouded mind and perpetuate an inability to deal with things. There will be times when we can pull through, undoubtedly, and we can kind of take that initial blow and just go head on with it. Sometimes we're a little more able-minded, I think, than we might think. But there are certain situations and certain scenarios that we cannot handle ourselves properly. We kind of go through this struggle, and inevitably through the struggle, we might need to seek help. It just might feel that we've been handling something wrong for so long, or it just hasn't been, you haven't been able to pull through. So seeking help, I think, is normal. But help is not necessarily a natural thing that's just going to kind of pop up when we need it. We're kind of destined to try to go out and seek help. It's hard to admit that, things are going awry in our lives, to when we've reached a certain breaking point or we've kind of maybe gone past that breaking point. It's hard to admit that kind of stuff. Seeking help seems impossible at times and sometimes very unachievable, but there will be a venture out for help eventually, hopefully, in your life. And if you venture out, there's a chance that you will receive help. I think everybody struggles with a little bit of that interior stuff and the exterior stuff. You kind of can't handle all your feelings and emotions, and sometimes those things are put to exterior motives, and sometimes it's just hard to deal with the thoughts that kind of race through your mind. And then when we think about kind of just exterior things in your day-to-day life, handling tasks, running errands, or whatever it may be, sometimes there's a struggle. I think the struggle is very normal, but we're always kind of seeking help for the interior stuff, for feelings and emotion, and for the exterior stuff, your kind of everyday tasks. We know that when we're kind of need to seek help and we're kind of pushed to that point, we know that there's something wrong. Hopefully, you kind of reach that point that you know that something's maybe out of your control. Not everything is going to be able to be handled in the moment, and you can't help yourself all the time. It's not necessarily right, like an incapable thing, right? It's not like you're dumb or unable to do things, and you're never going to be able to do things. It's just some things, like I said, are out of your control. And sometimes we try to overextend ourselves too, right? You think you can kind of work through an emotion, you think you can handle a certain thing in your everyday life, but you just bit off a little bit more than you can chew, and that's a struggle. I just sometimes it's just for a long time, right? And that could be very demoralizing. And even in those short times, right, where you've only struggled for a short period of time, it could be hugely effective, or to you in a bad way. Effective to you in a bad way. Sorry. I just feel a lot of times we're just at our wits' end, I think, right? you kind of reach that point where you just can't move along anywhere. And sometimes it's not necessarily this overwhelming bad feeling all the time. Sometimes it's just like you really do feel that feeling of stuck. You kind of hit that metaphorical wall in a way. We know that situations aren't easy. I mean, we were able to maybe deal with certain things, and that's a very true thing as humans is we're a little more endurant than we think we are at times. But everything's not always okay. So situations aren't always going to be easy to deal with. You're not always going to feel like you can handle your certain emotions, and feelings can be very overwhelming, and especially when things are tied to those kind of exterior things. And sometimes those exterior things, you may not feel a lot of emotions, but just by sheer, just like you're trying to push yourself, but you can't go through with something. You think you can, but you can't. There may not be a lot of emotion to those things sometimes, but it's just things aren't working. So we're gonna go seek help. Like I said, it's a super normal thing. We're not always fit for certain situations, so help is definitely 100% needed. Support, I mean, like support is super beneficial, even if it's not necessarily like a direct help where someone's kind of putting their hands on the situation with you or putting themselves in the mindset with you. Sometimes just that support, letting you, someone not letting you know that you're doing okay, or maybe learning something, a way to do something different in your life, and just trying to apply that every day and try to apply it to the best of your abilities, knowing that this is how things are kind of done. And I know that this is, having the support behind me is sometimes just as motivating as actually having that hands-on help. Sometimes it does have to be hands-on though. We want and need a difference 100% in our lives when things are going awry. You can't just stick in that negative dark cloud of feeling bad, and or just not being able to do your everyday to day life tasks. It's not good to stay in that kind of bad spot. So the difference is what we go for, a better solution to the struggle. I think like I sometimes think that sometimes I just need a little bit of support, right? In my life, I think I just want someone to tell me I'm doing okay. That, oh, you're doing all right, Gunther. This is how things look. But undoubtedly, I think I do sometimes need people to. I wish I had more hands on. I wish someone could just take the pain away from me, or just do things for me. That kind of makes me feel a little bummish and a little lazy that I don't want to, take things head on. But things are very overwhelming at times. 100%. I try to remember to differentiate. Certain things are overwhelming truly by nature. Some things I've built up as overwhelming. That's kind of a hard thing to sometimes differentiate. And help doesn't come naturally. I think that's a big thing that I tell myself all the time, and I've gotten better about over the years. Is I used to be so was like, woe is me, and why doesn't it just things get better, and why doesn't someone just come and help me or whatever? But I mean, it just doesn't come naturally. Sometimes it does. I mean, sometimes, it feels like when you're at your worst, things will come in and help you out, and something saves you in a theoretical, metaphorical, whatever sense. But I don't think it's not just going to pop up. And I think the resources to receive help aren't always like the most immediate sometimes, right? Where it's like you don't always know what to look for when you're seeking help eventually. Or it's or like maybe you just have nothing to rely on in general too. I think it's like someone tells you, or you need help, but there's maybe so many different like things that you need help with, or you kind of just have all these things already blocking your mind that you can't even think of the first step. And like I said, even sometimes that first step's like hard to see. It's not just as simple as like, oh, I have a problem with something that I need to go seek help. I need to go find that help. It's not always that simple. So when it's not that simple, you're not going to always know where to look for right off the bat. And unfortunately, some people in their lives just don't have a lot of reliability on things. And that's from different nature. Maybe people aren't super reliable in your life, the people that you do have, or maybe you just don't have anybody, so you can't rely on someone. So you're kind of left to your own devices, undoubtedly. That kind of puts you in a position to force you into kind of opening yourself up, I think. That's the big step right off the bat is you have to have this kind of willingness to accept help, right? You got to have this willingness to admit that you can't handle the feelings and emotions you have, or kind of this something that you're trying to do in your life, this day-to-day thing you just can't do anymore, or you're kind of stuck in a way. So you got to be willing to accept that help. It's definitely it's not in your best interest to sit there and deny help. It's I know that sometimes we feel like we're like more capable, or we feel that like we just don't need it. We're gonna pull through. We don't want to disturb someone at times, even right, or disturb anybody with our problems. But denying help, then eventually people just don't want to give you help at all, or just like help is like avoiding you. It's kind of like this weird nature of the world where it's you want to deny help, you want to do it on your own, then you're gonna be forced to do it on your own. Yeah, but we're kind of as humans, we got to know how to do things on our own and learn how to push through emotions and push through the everyday to day life. But like I said, I mean, help isn't a bad thing. It's not like receiving help is going to make you weaker. Definitely not. It doesn't reflect a lesser you. Like I said, it's hard to open yourself up in general. It's a very vulnerable thing. Having that willingness to accept help, or just having that willingness to go and venture out. You're gonna have to do a little searching at times, right? You're gonna have to find resources and find solutions. You're gonna have to find where to look. I think with seeking help, I mean, it's I don't I maybe I'm not the perfect person necessarily to ask because I find it hard, but I think at the times that I've had help and I've truly gotten help for things in my life, it's come with just being not only me realizing that I need it, but being so open and asking for it. I think truly the best help I've ever had is like asking someone where I can even like, can you help me, or do you know where I can get help? Especially if you have like this beneficialness of having someone in your life that maybe can give you some sort of perspective on what you're going through. They've gone through their own emotions, they've had their own struggles with their day-to-day lives, so they know where to look. I know it like one of my big things that I kind of took control of, one of the struggles was my mental health. And I just never knew where to look. I didn't know how therapy necessarily worked, and I didn't know how to do that. Very thankfully, I had my father who I asked for help. I cried for help, and he helped me. He helped me find a therapist, and I did that for a while and felt better. I realized therapy, at least the therapy I was doing, was just me just going in and talking about how I'm doing okay still, and then getting medication, which wasn't helping me at all. I needed to talk about my problems, not just get medicated for my problems. But, you gotta learn how to ask, or that's so hard to do because sometimes you don't even I was very lucky to have my father and other people in my life that probably would have stepped in that moment. People don't have that in their life. Some people don't. Not everybody. So how do you ask? Who do you ask? Where do you look? It's hard. I think, I don't know. I know that I'm not very helpful, but I think it takes a lot of you got to kind of help yourself out in a way. That's hard to say, especially when you're struggling and you've kind of exhausted all your options and things have literally gone out of your control. But I think you just got to look towards other people that have gone through the same thing. I think that's a big thing. Maybe is maybe if you have the ability to see that that other people have these struggles, that then you kind of look towards that. That people have failed at things or have had uncontrolled emotions, and that maybe they've worked through it in a certain way. Doesn't mean that's kind of like your perfect outline for how to work through something, but that can help in seeing something from a different view. But it takes time. It's an unforeseen amount of time too, right? And also, like, it's a big thing to think about. Help doesn't necessarily mean better. You're gonna maybe like you're gonna go out and seek for help and receive it in some ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean everything is fixed. Some people, just as you, don't know how to handle something, and maybe they're trying to help you, or as you maybe would try to help someone else, but things just don't always turn out. Or you kind of try to learn how to do something a certain way and you've kind of done a little whatever research and or whatever you did and it's just not working how you thought it was. So help doesn't always mean better, but I think the whole point I think sometimes is just to have that different perspective. You know that there's a struggle that you kind of been going through, so you got to have a different outlook all of a sudden. You kind of got to force a different out. You got to kind of force a different outlook, I think, right? Because things are confusing. Work is always going to kind of be needed, so things are always going to be kind of confusing and unknown, and we're going to inevitably go through those types of things. And I think it's almost more so that you're not always going to have like one of these certain moments where help is always going to be effective. I think the help hopefully pushes you to work a little bit and work on things. Become a little more, not just think about it in a linear sense, but kind of broaden your horizon and how you're thinking about a struggle and in approaching it in different ways. Approaching how your whatever your emotions may be or whatever struggle in your day-to-day life you have. It's only for the better. It's only to figure out the unknowns. It's only to, quelch the harshnesses that kind of life throws at you, right? I think that's kind of the big thing to remember is that you're only trying to be better. Hope only is trying to make yourself stronger. So when you're kind of reached, like I said, that point of breaking or you're kind of stuck and everything is out of your control, you kind of overextended yourself. Help is only there to kind of support you and make you stronger at doing this certain thing, handling a certain emotion, handling a certain task or whatever it may be. Like I said, it's not weakness, it's not a lesser you. And help is not always going to be there too. So when you get a chance to have a little help and learn something about your emotions or learn something about your everyday to day life, the tasks that you do every day, and hopefully those chances that you get when you do get help, you kind of learn. You try to your best to take in the information and take in what you kind of just realized about your situation. And also making sure you keep yourself, like I said, open minded, opening yourself up and realizing that the struggles are because of this and the struggle is because of this. And I might have to approach it a couple different ways before something gets better. So when the help is not there, you have these lessons to kind of go back on. And maybe even like, it's through practice in a way too that you can also help other people. You kind of learned a certain thing and you kind of have a new point of view on your certain situation or on a certain scenario in general that you can offer something that other people just didn't see at first. But it's a big thing to struggle in life, and when you kind of reach that point where things have gotten out of your control and you've hit like a stuck point where you can't move on, I think seeking help is such a normal thing and it shouldn't be a shunned thing. It can be a hard thing though. It's not always easy to go look and say this is where help's going to help. This is where I'm going to have help. It's not like it's always prevalent to people's lives. But once you've kind of ventured out and you kind of put yourself out there and opened yourself up and become willing to accepting help, hopefully it comes up and hopefully you get the chance to be helped and learn a few lessons and not just like have someone do something for you or have some sort of control taken away from you and make everything better, but making sure that you know that you can push through something. It's going to take a little work and you might have to kind of look at it from different ways, but struggle is a part of life and seeking help for those struggles is normal. I have a pretty big love for movies. I wish I was kind of more involved in watching some of like the hidden gems or kind of lesser known movies, but nonetheless, I love watching movies. I feel like it's hard not to love the many different types of genres that cinematic experiences kind of give you, or these films give you. I tend to have like more love for certain films in my life that I've seen, right? There's certain ones that I consider classics or the ones that I love the most. But I try to enjoy movies as they come, or I avoid it altogether. Though through the years, there are many filmmakers and many movies that kind of stuck out. not just in the sense for myself, but I think it's insight in like culture in general more so. Unbelievable stories, incredible making, amazing performances by actors. Whatever you look for in movies, there are films that are considered like all-time classics, all-time greats, or at least kind of considered maybe more so like must-see movies. I was reading an article like it was like maybe a month and a half ago or something like that. And it was listed, it was said the 25 most like must-see movie or like, yeah, 25 must-see movies. Or it was like 25 of movies that you can't believe people haven't seen type thing. But it was an article that was kind of talking about all these classics that I guess maybe you could consider must-see movies. And I think maybe we all kind of have our own list, right? I might have my own list of must-see movies, but I was looking through the list of these movies and I kind of thought they're pretty good. A lot of these are classics and I think like pretty important movies in history. I won't dive into all the movies like each one that they all have their own history and so much legend and stuff like that behind them that they deserve their own like kind of, energy. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through the list and at least highlight a couple ones that I like. And if you're someone who's always kind of thinking that you maybe missed out on some movies and you haven't seen some of these films or whatever, here's a perfect list. Why not try to go see some of these movies, especially if you're trying to get into movies or, broaden your horizon in movies. But the first on the list was pretty perfect. I guess movie for the first one on the list was The Godfather, 1972. The Godfather's an incredible movie. It's still holds up to the day. I would even say that each Godfather movie is an amazing movie. But the first Godfather was very classic. It kind of opened up maybe the mind to how the inner workings of the mafia actually kind of worked. How the from the top down all the way, from the top down. Da 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 da. But incredible performances also by like Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, and I think it's an amazing movie, an unbelievable movie. The next one on the list was E.T., the Extraterrestrial, made in 1982, and I thought that was a pretty okay movie. It was kind of one of the first movies that it's not at the first one of its time, but it was kind of interesting in some of the effects that it had, and it's a very like kind of wholesome movie in the fact of this alien getting lost and kind of running into a boy who also is in theory kind of lost in life and doesn't feel like he fits in as this extraterrestrial doesn't fit in on Earth. But I mean, it's Lily Henry Thomas is the actor, I think, right? Yeah. And just the most amazing performance as a kid. If you ever want to cry your eyes out, you got to watch the audition tape that he did for that role. The kid, Henry Thomas is his name, I think. But that's an amazing movie, and like I said, just a good wholesome movie. The next one on the list is one that I consider one of my favorites and classics. Is The Shining, 1980. That one was made by Stanley Kubrick, and he doesn't do horror movies, but one thing he does do is like suspense. He kind of builds up tension, and he really makes people feel kind of uncomfortable at these kind of breaking points in the movie. And The Shining kind of does that perfectly. I think throughout the whole movie, you get a really big sense of just uncomfortability over and over and over again. You kind of get a little bit scared by Jack and kind of like you're worried for the family, for Danny and the mom. And it's just an amazing movie. And it's a lot different than the book. If you ever read The Shining, the book, it's a lot different, but still nonetheless a very spooky and suspenseful movie. The next one on the list is Alien, 1979. That's a good movie too. Ridley Scott, right? Wait, is it? Yeah, Ridley Scott. Yeah, Sigourney Weaver is the main actress in that, and that is considered a horror movie. And I think it's like really, and throughout history and maybe space movies, there's always been kind of a funness to space, and this time around, they really made aliens seem scary with the xenomorphs, and really made you feel the fears of deep space and how nobody will hear you scream. Right? That's like the tagline, right? But it's just those xenomorphs that freaked everybody out, and just thinking about being like the last one of your crew to survive, and that's just amazing. And Sigourney Weaver, really that breakout role for her. Next, they had The Dark Knight, 2008. And that one I can give a little bit of a toss up to. I think when we talk about superhero movies, that one kind of goes beyond the just action superhero movie. You got a little bit of the psyche behind Batman, a little bit more, and you got to be introduced to the Joker and a totally different version of the Joker than we ever had. And you get a lot of the inner workings of how Batman works and Bruce Wayne even a little bit, and you get to see how things function. And it's not just these it's not just epic, set pieces with a bunch of heroes thrown in battling. Even though there was great action, nonetheless, it was more so just a humanized version of Batman. But it was a great movie. Christopher Nolan does amazing. And then next on the list is one of my favorite movies, again on the list, Independence Day, 1996. I can see people maybe not saying this movie, but it's one of my favorites. I literally love this movie. I watch it all the time. Even I feel a little weird about Will Smith nowadays, but nonetheless, great movie. On the alien vibe still too, and it's kind of crazy to think about. That's kind of what it would be, right? If aliens came, it may not be as peaceful as some people might hope it would be. And maybe actually it'd be kind of scary that it would be actually like an attack. And then next I'll put Die Hard, or next on the I'm not putting, but next is Die Hard, 1988. I love Die Hard. It's not a bad movie. It's one of the more iconic action movies, but when people say it's like a Christmas movie, that gets me a little gassed up. I'm not gonna lie. Just because it takes place about around Christmas doesn't mean it's a Christmas movie. But this kind of put Bruce Willis in this kind of upper echelon of like action movies and gave him a career for a long time, even though he already kind of had a career. Next on the list is Pulp Fiction, one of my favorite movies, my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, very much so. I think everybody's performance is amazing, and I really love the kind of like jumbled story where it kind of goes back and forth between each person's perspective, you know what I'm saying? But it's all one connected story. I think it's awesome. Another Bruce Willis movie. But just John Travolta I think is pretty interesting, and it's Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman. It's just a great cast, and I think a kind of an amazing movie in the sense that it kind of gives you like a cool like it just makes you like excited to find out kind of the how everybody like kind of goes through this whole story, right? It kind of as each part comes along, you're like, oh, another character or more of the story, yada yada. That's kind of what Quentin Tarantino does, though. He likes to jumble the story up. Next on the list is they had Titanic, which I mean, I guess you could put the Titanic. It was at the first, it was one of those epic movies, right? It became like a blockbuster hit. It wasn't the first blockbuster, but it just broke all these records, and it's a legend. It's I mean, the Titanic is this like ship that went down 100 years ago, 120 years ago or whatever, almost like 110 or whatever. But it was cool to think about it being sat underneath the sea for so long and someone discovering it and kind of thinking about how people lived and on the or what was everybody's lives like right before the sinking of the Titanic. And I think it's a good movie. It kind of broke out Leonardo DiCaprio for sure, and Kate Winslet. Next on the list, they had The Matrix, 1999. And that one I kind of I can agree with because it was like pretty cool at the time and got people kind of thinking about, oh, are we actually in a simulation? And still something that people talk about till this day. But it's a great action movie nonetheless. And I think honestly, if it's Keanu Reeves, kind of one of his better movies, I can say that confidently. Action's amazing in it. The kind of advancements in computer technology that they could do in filmmaking was very prevalent in that movie. I think it set a precedent for action movies to kind of come at that time. I'm gonna try to fly through the list a little bit more because I'm gonna admit that some of these movies I haven't seen, so I'm gonna go through a few of them real quick. Casablanca, 1942. I've not seen Casablanca. Or I've seen clips from it, but I've never seen the full movie. I can't really tell you much about it. Um, Humphrey Bogarts is the main actor in it, right? I think. Next up on the list is It Was a Wonderful Life. Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. That one I have seen. I've seen it maybe a couple times. I usually only watch it around Christmas. It's one of my dad's favorite movies, one of his favorite Christmas movies, and 100% a sad movie. I think that one's got Jimmy Stewart in it. I think. And then they had next was Citizen Kane, which is another one of my dad's favorite movies. That one was made in 1941. I have seen that movie 100%, but it's been a while, and it was a movie that I kind of watched one time, and it's an amazing movie nonetheless. It was shot very well for its time, and Orson Welles is an incredible director, and it was different. How they used shadows and lighting, and in a time when color wasn't a thing in film. I can sit there and admit that I haven't seen those three very much. I haven't watched those like a bunch of times. But those are three classics that I think would be that everybody should go watch 100%. Casablanca, Citizen Kane, It's a Wonderful Life, and all of them made in the 40s, which kind of shows you filmmaking has revolutionized and kept expanding over time, only getting better, I think, as we've kind of gone along. But next we'll get into some movies that I have seen. Next was Forrest Gump, which I love Forrest Gump 100%. 1994 is when that came out. I will say that's probably one of my favorite movies, top five maybe. It's Tom Hanks's. He won an Oscar for that. Literally the year after he won an Oscar for Philadelphia, which is it's insane. I mean, it just shows how talented of an actor he is. But I mean, I love Robin Wright as Jenny. I think she's absolutely fantastic. Gary Sinise as Lieutenant Dan. Bubba, dude. I mean, I just love that movie, and it's kind of cool to think about this simple man experiencing all these amazing things just by nothing in his head blocking himself, no thoughts, no nothing to like tell him he can't do it, that he's not able. I love that movie. I think it's a motivating movie for everybody. Next on the list, I skipped over one. I'll go back to it. Jaws was the one that I skipped over. 1975. This movie is considered to be the first blockbuster of all time. And I mean, I can agree with it being one of the best, like it kind of sits in, it's a horror movie, but it's more so, it's kind of like a monster movie, horror movie, kind of suspense thriller. It's a shark. I mean, it's a shark attack. It's freaking scary. And if people weren't already scared of sharks before, it was like after that, it was like 100%, 100 times more of a fear. Steven Spielberg kind of popped up on the list a few times. He very much shows that he's kind of revolutionized how movies have been made and what people want to see. And amazing filmmaker, really portrays a lot. But I think Jaws. I mean, as a kid when I watched it, it definitely scared me. Next on the list is another one of my favorites of all time, and that is The Goonies. I love The Goonies. I think it's a great story. And as a kid, I remember watching all these, it's adventuring these kids trying to save their neighborhood and trying to find One Eye Willie's treasure. And I thought that was amazing. It's literally like what I wanted to be as a kid, an adventurer, go out on adventures and do all these crazy things. And I think it was amazing to watch that. And that's a Steven Spielberg movie, I think, right? Maybe not. Maybe not. I may be stupid on that. But I mean, every kid can watch that and put themselves in in those kids' shoes, and I think that's amazing. I think it's such a fun story. I love adventure movies like that. Next on the list is The Graduate, 1967. That one's got Dustin Hoffman, and he's just basically a student who gets seduced by a professor, a teacher. Controversial maybe in a way. It's a pretty okay movie. I mean, like it's a little problematic and like this underage kid or whatever having sex with his teacher, but it's a coming of age movie, a man becoming a man in this kind of predatory alter cougar, having sex with Dustin Hoffman. It's a good movie. It's not like it's a bad movie. It's not like it's gross. It's a good movie. Next on the list is Kill Bill, 2003, another Quentin Tarantino movie. This one I can maybe not put on there, and people are gonna come at me. I know, but it's not like it's not a great movie. It's literally just bloody and amazing. I think it's how funny, even like when it's not live action, there's like the comic strip part where it shows the backstory of Lucy Liu's character. It's kind of like in that comic form. And dude, I think about how much blood is like, it's just such a bloody movie, but also just a good tale of revenge, right? You don't even get Uma Thurman's character's name. She's the bride. And she's just a character who's just, she's taking revenge on all these people who wronged her and very much so taking revenge. Dude. Next on the list was Psycho, 1960. I think that's an amazing movie. It kind of was one of the first like really thriller suspense movies. That's what Alfred Hitchcock was great at, was building up that suspense and really making people just worried about what's going to happen next and worried about what the next scene's going to bring. Also, the original Scream Queen, Janet Leigh. That's Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. If anybody didn't know that, Janet Leigh. That's her mom, and she's the original Scream Queen. She's the you know pull the shirt, shower curtain back, stab you in the shower. That's Janet Leigh. And also one of the first times that was like a fake out too, where it was like Janet Leigh was top billing in the movie, but was killed off in like the first like 20 minutes or something like that. But a great movie nonetheless. I'm gonna skip over the next, or not gonna skip over, but the next two I'm gonna kind of fly through. But The Sound of Music, 1960, one of the best musicals, undoubtedly. I would agree with that. Julia Andrews, yeah, Julia Andrews. Sorry, unbelievable. I think she's just such a soft presence in that movie. Beautiful voice. Next, they had Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which is the first Star Wars movie, 1977. You know, I don't think I'd put any Star Wars movie on there. It was very much so revolutionary in special effects. I think that's why you put it on there. And it started a whole amazing story, I think. I love Star Wars, but I don't think you necessarily need to put Star Wars on there. Next on the list is Scream 1996. That's one of my favorite slasher movies of all time. It's kind of brought the slasher back into the modern day. And it's just they still make Screams till today. I mean, they're going to come out with a new one hopefully within the next year or two. But it's just I love Scream. I think it's just a great story, and I love how every movie the killer's different, right? I think that kind of is cool. That every movie is basically a copycat of the last killers, so it keeps it kind of fresh. And then next on the list is The Wizard of Oz, which I mean I can definitely 100% agree with 100%. It's an amazing movie. It brought kind of color into the mainstream. It was just a beautiful tale about a girl getting lost in this fantastical world, the land of Oz, and meeting all these people that kind of resemble people in her real life, and kind of going on this adventure, and always being scared to kind of go away from home, but knowing there's life out there, and you really get to experience it in the most fantastical, whimsical way ever. And then the last two, I'm just gonna say because I don't think I necessarily agree, even though I love these movies, but I don't agree with. The Breakfast Club, 1985. I think The Breakfast Club is one of the better comedies of the 80s, but you don't necessarily need to put it on there because it's not the best comedy of all time. It kind of maybe is a pinnacle for the John Hughes kind of, that whole time period with all those actors. It kind of they all met together in that one movie. But I don't think I'd put that one on the list. And then lastly, they had Mean Girls, 2004. Not like I don't love Mean Girls. I'm not gonna watch the remake that they just put out, but it's not like I don't love the movie, but I don't get it. It's a good comedy. It's a good movie, kind of that it's very popular to the generation Gen Zs and stuff like that, but I don't know if I'd put it on the 25 must-see movies of all time. But I mean, these are just this list 25 must-see movies, right? I think if I could probably throw a couple of my own. I mean, I would say like A Big Trouble in Little China is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think is a must-see movie. Halloween, the original Halloween, is I think a must-see horror movie at least. So there's a few movies that I know I could put on there. But this list is 25 of the must-see, like the 25 best must-see movies, I guess you could say. There's a lot of I think that this list did justice to a lot of great movies, and I think if you at least with the first half of this list, if you went and saw all those movies, I think you're on a good track to go see to know a little bit more about filmmaking and some of the history and kind of these legendary movies. But if you haven't seen them, don't stress because everybody has their own taste in movies. Everybody wants different cinematic experiences. Just enjoy the movies that you want to. Alrighty, friends. That's really all I have to say about that. Episode 32 done, completed. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you want to listen to this episode or any of my other episodes, they'll always be up on YouTube or Spotify under the Odd Thoughts podcast. If you find it relatable at all or you enjoy the podcast any way possible, then I'd appreciate some support in subscribing to the podcast. You can also follow me on a bunch of different social medias. I have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'll make sure to link those all in the description below, as well as my YouTube channel description. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I always get love the opportunity to get on the microphone and talk to everybody, as I usually always say. But it just gives me a lot of help with just getting my thoughts out there, even when they're super random and I get to have a little bit of fun. It kind of helps me just clear my mind up a little bit. And like I said, I know that a couple people are listening, and whether you enjoy every single topic I talk about or one per episode, it's just I know it's helping me out. And I know that it's just beneficial for myself. But nonetheless, I love y'all. Thank you for stopping by. Make sure to show up for yourselves every single day and be excellent to each other.